So I can begin by telling you how much I've enjoyed this wonderful, what am I going to say, call it a reboot?
Yeah.
Bringing this great story. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, you probably would have been quite young, but do you remember this when it sort of first was released
Certainly,
back?
I was a huge fan of the show in the beginning. I just started in I think it was in '94 or something, '93. I can't remember, but I think I started in on theater school, drama school back then. So I was a huge fan. This was the first time where you actually saw like established actors in Denmark that actually started to act normally. I mean, we have a
Mm,
very, as you have in the UK, we have a very strong theater background. So
mm,
this was the first time you actually see people were really like authentic in the way
mm.
they were acting. So I found that a huge deal. I mean, it's a showstopper, or you want to call it. It was a new grab on a new take on the whole thing. So this was the first time you saw people actually doing film acting.
Mm. Yeah, because I mean, because the show does come with a kind of huge kind of cult following that's gathered over the years. Does that,
Right,
as
right.
when you join into a project like this, a property like this, does that excite you as an actor, having that quite established, expectant fan base in place, or does it add a kind of extra pressure at all?
Definitely. I think I know. I'm a huge fan of Lars, and I've been working with him a couple of times, and we have a good friendship, and he's a funny guy. But I was a huge fan back then because of the whole idea of this horror thing that we've never seen before, and I
Mm.
don't think we've seen it in this way ever since the first two episodes seasons. But I think there's something about it that was it's just like as Nicholas Bro put it the other day. He said it's just like being a part of a Marvel comic that you've been a huge fan of, and all of a sudden you're
Mm.
flying in the air. So that was
Yeah.
huge, and it was also funny because we shot it for the first time. I actually thought the first two seasons was shot in the actual hospital, but it wasn't. It was in a studio. So this was also a big thing to actually do this during COVID, and amongst people that was actually having life death situations as well. So that was had a big impact on the whole concept of doing it.
Yeah, I mean, how was that? Because I guess like, during the pandemic, I mean, I know obviously that the rules were so strict when it came to like mask and closed sets
Right,
and stuff like that. You guys were literally shooting in the one place everybody wanted to avoid
right.
during a pandemic. How was that experience for you as an actor being in an actual hospital during that whole time?
I came from. I've been at that point. I just came from the UK where I've been filming for 8 months, and there was also these bubbles and these restrictions and everything, and we couldn't go out and all that. But when I got home, because it was a hospital, it was much more strict, and there was
Mm,
so many rules, and you couldn't talk to certain people. You had to have your masks on at all times, and I think that was just it was definitely restricting on a lot of things, but well, we pulled through. I mean you have to do a job, but I think it was there was high alert in that hospital, also because we had to wait on the staff to be vaccinated. That was the thing. We were waiting for the vaccination program to go through. So that was certain. We couldn't, when we went into an elevator, sometimes we have to be sure that there was no one in it from the staff, for the real staff and stuff like that. So we had to
yeah,
wait. You can imagine in a big hospital like that, you have to wait for the lift for quite a long time. Then
yeah. I loved your character in this. I mean, you have this wonderful ability, looking across your career, to combine kind of comedy and drama in this kind of wonderful marriage. Do you
oh,
see them
I'm
as
happy to hear.
different skills? Do you see them as different skills, or do you think the two completely go hand in hand?
I think you don't necessarily have to have comedy into what you're doing. I think there's something that was unavoidable in terms of how Lars wanted me to play this thing. I mean, you have to take it serious no matter what, and if you don't do that, it's you everything is falling apart. But this character is unwittingly funny, so he had to he had to take himself very serious, and at the same time he was funny. And he's making all these jokes all the time about either you can do this or you can do that. That was the thing that Lars called me several times before we started shooting and said he was cracking up of his own jokes. And that was something I said, that's going to be tough to do stuff that is so jokish in a show like that. But if you look at it, especially the second season, there's a lot of comedy in it as well. So you just have to take it serious. And I love to do both. I think they how would you say, confirm each other. I think it's if something is very serious, I always want to puncture that kind of balloon or bubble, because there's something in it that is hilarious about taking yourself very serious. But I don't all the time put comedy into jobs. I've been doing it for a couple of shows now, but I hope it's only a coincidence.
But you mentioned, I mean, it is quite tricky tonally, like you said, that kind of to put in comedy in a situation where sometimes you wouldn't normally have it. Is that where you as an actor just have to trust the director? And when you've got someone like Lars von Trier making something, is that where you just go, because I know in terms of getting both of those things without kind of like affecting the other and just working seamlessly, is that where as an actor you just have to go, they will make sure that it works and it comes out well on screen?
Right. You just have to put your head completely. Somebody said once, I remember when we did the Idiots back then, somebody said it's just like being in a what do you call it, with puppets, what do you call it, marionette kind of a theater. When you have these, you just have to go full in on it and just hope for the best. And you have sometimes, I mean, there was not a day where both very established actors and newcomers just went from stage after shooting like, what just happened? I said, nobody had no idea what they were doing. So that was really putting yourself into his hands. I think that's a great idea, working that way, because then you're completely open and completely vulnerable, but great things happen from there. Lars likes the faults. He loves when you're out of what do you call it, when you don't know where you are and you have no idea how to get back to the shore. For instance, Lars never does rehearsals. That's his mantra, that he just come on set and then somebody says action. So you have no idea who's coming out the doors. You have no idea how the others are going to act, what kind of realm we're in altogether. So you just have to have an idea and hope for the best. But that's very tough for some people, especially the established older actors have a tendency of having a problem with no rehearsals.
Yeah. I mean, I think you've directed briefly before, and I think you might be doing it again. So when you're on set working with someone like an auteur like Lars, are you kind of consciously taking notes, mental notes, or is this something you just absorb naturally as an actor?
I'm very fascinated by Lars' way of working, because he seems like he has. He takes a small thing and then he takes it and he studies it like no one would ever do that. I mean, he's obsessed with some topic, and nobody really knows what he's talking about until you see the final product. It's just like right there you see, okay, it makes sense now. To me, it makes sense. I had a complete epiphany when I saw the show. I think it was in Venice. I saw it the first time. It was just like, I can see it now, but he has a vision, and it's impossible for anyone else to actually understand where he's going. But you can see when it's important for him. All of a sudden, he comes up with me. For instance, I was saying, "Oh," which means like "damn" in Danish, and I say that all the time. And he was very keen on how I said that. That was very important that I said "oh" instead of like "oh," or something. It had to be like exposed, and it had to be out there. And then he can say that, and some other things doesn't care about. And he always has this thing about, he always directs in percentages. He always sets like 10% down, or for me he sets 100% down, or he says 1,000% down. But he has this. It's easy when you understand how he thinks. But because he's interested in something that is beyond this world. I mean, also in terms of acting, but at the same time, he's very real. It's very hard to understand, and I'm trying to take notes in my mind, but it's very hard to understand how his mind works. Really, I don't think I'll ever understand.
I don't think any of us quite understand it. But just how much of an inspiration has he and like Thomas Vinterberg been, not just on Danish cinema, but on world cinema? Because you mentioned you'd never seen that style of acting before when you first watched this all those years ago. But that's kind of the case for me as well. I mean, we studied Festen at school, and I'd never seen anything like that before. Do you think, I mean, do you think that impact filters out beyond Denmark, and that has actually had a big impact on world cinema at all?
Yeah, and it has what you can learn from it is that both of these guys have done something, especially also with Festen, that he did something that I have never seen before. Because if you look at Festen like from a distance, it follows the same rules of narrative, the way it's going to tell the story. It's complete like any other film you would see. The difference is that you are unsure many times during the story. Is this going to do what I would think would happen? Is this going to evolve? And the turning points is completely different places in the film that you normally see. And that is only because they insist on doing something that they feel is right. And that has a big potential, and that has something that I think everybody can learn from, because rules are rules, and they don't give a shit about the rules. And that is something especially Lars has as a mantra. He doesn't care about the rules. He hates rules. He says always, I'm working with the same editor as he had, and every time he left the room for the day during editing, he said, "Remember to be sloppy." He said that to her all the time, and every time they did like a cutting where the owl was coming and everything was perfect, he came and we have to disrupt it somehow, because it was too nice. It was too, as you would always see it. He wants to have a bat in his hand and just give it a blow to his own creation. I find that very bold, and that means that perfection is ridiculous, and I love that.
Yeah. So I've only got time for one more question, but I was going to ask, because often people will group together Scandinavia when it comes to the arts. So people talk about Scandi dramas as being part of this kind of one identity. But in this show, it highlights the kind of cultural differences between the Danes and the Swedes. So with that in mind, from within Scandinavia, is there a sense of surprise that the rest of the world groups films and TV together from that region? When in actual fact, you can probably notice quite distinctive differences between the nations and their different creative outputs.
I think there is a difference. I think we have a perception of Sweden, of course, because we're so close and we're so similar in many ways. But as it always is, also even in London, if you go around the corner, there's a completely different way of thinking, and I think that is something. You put people in boxes, and you have a tendency of. We have always been the little brother of Scandinavia. Definitely, I remember. When I was in film school, I was in theater school. We went on this to Finland on this drama kind of festival, and we had to come up with, it was a cafe night, and everybody had to show up with something for the night. We hadn't prepared. We had like a play that was supposed to do, but apart from that, we had no preparation for anything. And the Swedes came with some poems they did. The Norwegians had some. They had some Shakespeare, and the Finns had some miming, and we had no idea what to come with. So we were desperate. We were in Helsinki, and we said what to do. We were 20 people grouping up, and we said, let's just hire a stripper, because everybody likes a stripper. I know it's back in the days, you would never do that today, but back then it was we found it so hilarious. But what we didn't know was that was the biggest fuck you to everyone else that actually tried to accomplish or show something. And put something on the table, and we just said, fuck you guys. That wasn't even our intention, but that is how I think a lot of people would look at Denmark. I mean, we are a little bit the little brother that didn't take anything serious, and I think that is where the boldness comes from in terms of Lars. I think Lars is very Danish in that regard.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that makes that makes him bold. I think I think the thing Thomas Vinterberg is doing right now is also extremely bold. And I think it has to be personal. Everything that has to be universal has to be personal. I come from something. I don't know if there's a special kind of Scandi drama anymore. I think things have changed, and I think now even America and all the way abroad, they're looking at Europe in general, because now we can do stuff also. So things have changed, but we definitely had an era where there was completely there was a certain Scandi what do you call it, superiorness in terms of drama. I don't know if that's the case anymore.
No. Well, I still love all the stuff you guys are doing, and I think I've been following your career for a while, and I just every project just seems as fascinating as the last. So thank you.
Happy to hear. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys.
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.